Welcome to another 21st Capital Live show. We started strong and we're going strong in this new year. We're thrilled to have you here as we dive into the most important aspect of Bitcoin self-custody. We're thrilled. Um, Whether you're a new Bitcoiner or a seasoned hodler, this conversation is for you. And joining us today is the incredible Dr. Ken Berry, a true advocate for empowering individuals and critical thinking, whether it's in health, lifestyle, or now financial sovereignty. Dr. Berry has some fantastic questions about Bitcoin self-custody and 21st Capital Smart Vault, and we can't wait to address them. Dr. Berry, welcome to our show.
Thank you guys for having me. I'm a big fan of the work you do. As I told you before we went live, I am a Bitcoin newbie. I started out buying some Bitcoin and some Ethereum on Coinbase because all my entire life I've been kind of a maverick or an early adapter when it comes to most things, and I think that's why I now own some Bitcoin. And I got on Nostr. I use Primal, and I'm on Nostr now because I think that decentralized everything is probably the only way that humanity continues to exist as a species, because everything's become so centralized and is controlled by a small group of people. I don't think that's the way forward. I think that's the way back to the Stone Age. And so I'm happy. I learn from you guys every day about Bitcoin. And so, like I said, I started out just with Coinbase because that's the mainstream option. That's what you do when you start buying some Bitcoin. And then when I got on Nostr, everybody on Nostr yelled at me and said, "Hey, dummy, get your Bitcoin. Why do you own Ethereum? That's dumb. Get rid of that. Convert that to Bitcoin. And why the hell are you on Coinbase? Get off Coinbase." And so I'm like, "Oh, okay, I didn't know because I'm a newbie. I don't know this stuff." And so I started a Strike account and I converted all my Ethereum into Bitcoin, and then I moved all my Bitcoin to Strike. And when I say all of my Bitcoin, don't think of, it's un poquito. It's not much, okay? And so, but I think that owning any amount of Bitcoin is better than owning no Bitcoin. I think you guys would probably agree with that. And for somebody who doesn't know anything about Bitcoin, I think that owning some Bitcoin on Coinbase is better. It's less bad than owning no Bitcoin. Surely you would agree with that. But there's a learning curve for everything, whether it comes to diet, nutrition, medicine, health, Bitcoin, everything. There's a learning curve. And the only way to get more people to buy Bitcoin is to meet them where they are. And I think that's very important for anybody in the Bitcoin space, whether you're talking to your dad, trying to get your dad to own some Bitcoin, or your next door neighbor or a good friend. You can't talk to them in the language that you currently understand because they don't understand that. Understanding Bitcoin is a huge paradigm shift because the average person thinks that the US dollar is the ultimate store of value. It's an irrational belief and it's a false belief, but it is currently their belief. And if you don't, and that doesn't make them an idiot. For a long damn time, for decades, that's been absolutely the truth. Or at least it was true enough that it would get you by, right? But I've been studying fiat currency. I was big into gold and silver, still am. I'm still not convinced that it's not smart to have a percentage of your assets in hard metal that you have self custody of. I'm still not convinced that's not wise to have 5 or 10% in that. So I've been looking at this for over a decade. I've been looking at fiat money, the dangers of it, how it always goes to zero every single time in the history of humanity. It always goes to zero. Gold doesn't go to zero. It never goes to zero. It might fluctuate, but it never goes to zero. And what the paradigm shift is you're trying to tell people some of these people aren't even comfortable using a computer. They aren't even comfortable doing an internet search. Or can I trust what Chat GPT tells me or not, right? These are the people. And so for those who don't study human psychology like I do, there's 5 categories of people. And when you talk about any subject, there's these 5 categories. There's the mavericks, who are the first in on any new thing. Then there's the early adopters, which that's when it comes to Bitcoin, I consider myself an early adopter. Then there's the late adopters. And then there's just kind of the mainstream people. And then there's the laggards. So I think every maverick now owns some Bitcoin. That's about 5 to 10% of the population. And then the early adopters are about 15% of the population. And the early adopters right now are coming in. They're coming in. You don't have to convince them. And so for all the Bitcoin influencers, being an influencer in diet, nutrition, health, medicine, I can tell you when I started talking about, let's use keto, for example, the ketogenic diet. Stop eating sugar, stop eating grains and beans, stop eating vegetable seed oils, fill your plate with meat, eggs, seafood, and a little bit of veg, a few nuts, a few berries. That's keto, right? Keto is not keto bread and keto cake and keto pie. That's bullshit. That's marketing. That's still fiat food. And see, fiat can be applied, that concept, that paradigm can be applied to food as well. But even back in 2019 and 2020, I was well aware that meat, eggs, and seafood, that is the ultimate human diet. Anything you eat that's not meat, eggs, and seafood, it may not be bad for you, but it's not as optimally good for you as meat, eggs, and seafood. Right, Momo? See what I'm saying? But I knew back in 2019 and 2020, nobody's ready to hear that. Nobody's ready to hear that yet, right? So there's this concept in linguistics and in oratory and in psychology called Overton's window. So at any given time, when you're talking to a mainstream audience, there are things that are not acceptable to talk about. And if you talk about those things too early, the only people that will hear you are the mavericks and the early adopters. Everybody else will immediately tune you out. And so if back in 2019, I was saying you should eat only meat, the vast majority, 85% of the population would have been, this guy's nuts. What? And so I honored the principle of Overton's window. And so I said, no, eating some meat is good for you. Eating more meat is good for you. You should eat more. You should eat at least some meat for our vegetarians and our vegan brothers and sisters. You got to add some meat, eggs, and seafood to your diet, or you're not going to be healthy. If you're living on a junk food, thoroughly fiat food diet, you're going to get sick and you're going to suffer and die prematurely, right? And so I knew it wasn't time to be talking about a carnivore diet back in 2019. It wasn't time. We hadn't moved the discussion window enough so that the average person could go, carnivore, maybe. I mean, there's a lot of people doing it, right? So I think that same lesson applies to Bitcoin, because you will see a lot of Bitcoin influencers, some very big, but some very small, yelling at people, making fun of people, talking down to people who don't own any Bitcoin yet. And I can just tell you from personal experience, that's exactly the 100% wrong strategy. You can't make fun of people into understanding something. And definitely you can't make fun of people to make them believe in something, because I'm sorry, but humans are emotional animals. Most of our decisions are based on emotions. Even those of us who think that we're Stoics and think that we're Ayn Rand objectivists, the majority of your decisions are ultimately based largely on how you feel about something. Sorry, that's just how humans work. I hate that. I hate that that's true about me. I hate that that's true about you two guys. But it's true. It's true.
Yes.
And so you have to know that about humans, and you have to honor that about humans, or they're not going to hear you. And because everybody who's a maverick or an early adopter in Bitcoin, you already own some Bitcoin, you're well aware that when the masses start to buy Bitcoin, that's going to be good for you. That's going to make Bitcoin, the price of Bitcoin in fiat dollars go up. It's going to make your Bitcoin more valuable. So why are you using this terrible strategy of belittling people and making fun of people and browbeating people If your goal is to make Bitcoin mainstream and make it the uncancelable currency, why are you using the worst possible strategy to try to get people to open a Strike account or open a Coinbase account, God forbid? Why are you using the worst possible strategy? Stop that. You're not helping yourself. You're not helping the Bitcoin movement at all by being an asshole.
Yeah. First of all, I totally agree with everything you just said, Dr. Berry.
100%.
But before we dive into the topic of Bitcoin, I just wanted to say how unfortunate and how sad I am. I didn't know you before actually Momo told me about you. I actually a little story about my nutrition background. I don't talk about this on our channels much, but now that we have you on, maybe I say a little bit about it and then we dive into Bitcoin again.
Sure.
So I have an autoimmune disease. So I have psoriasis, which is a very skin disease that you get, which is not even visible on my skin. You know, it's a very light psoriasis disease that I have. But you know how it works, right? With autoimmune diseases, it starts to create inflammation in the body, and so I was struggling with back pain, with lower back pain for years. And I went from one doctor to another for years when I lived in Germany, and no doctor could actually help me. And all they did was either send me to a different doctor or tell me to just live with it. This is literally what they told me, to live with it because there is nothing they can do to heal it. That's it, you know? And that was back in 2015. Even this is long before I knew anything about Bitcoin, right? Bitcoin came way later. It came in 2018 or 2017. So I was struggling with this pain, and now I'm really grateful that I had this disease, because this disease forced me to actually do the work and actually study this topic and understand what is actually happening. And when I learned that it's actually the food that is causing this problem, that is my lifestyle that is causing this problem, and I just stopped eating this sugary diet and this junk that they feed us, right? The fiat food, as we call it.
Yep.
It changed my life. And all of a sudden, every single thing all these doctors told me all these years was absolute garbage, nonsensical trash, that I cannot get healthy again. And you know, the sad thing is, even after finding out what I actually have, they diagnosed me with this disease. They said, now we know, but there's nothing we can do. You have an autoimmune disease, you have to live with it. That's it. And that was
Just live with
literally
it.
it for me. So
Yeah.
this
And
this actually,
they probably said if it gets bad enough, there are these prescription medications, but they have a lot of
yes,
side effects and they're very expensive and they're probably not going to help you much. So just try to live with it as best you can.
exactly. That's
Yeah.
exactly what they did. And the
Yeah.
funny thing is, my wife has the same issue, or had the same issue, until she met me. And when she started to eat just like I do, she was even taking injections, which is quite crazy. They were giving her
Yep.
anti-immune injections to
Yep.
basically stop the pain from her lower back. But it was exactly the same issue: autoimmune disease from bad food and bad habits that were built up over the years. And once she started to eat actually clean food, everything just stopped, and she stopped taking the medication, and she's perfectly healthy now. So I just wanted to say that I'm very happy that I actually got to know about all of this before I got into Bitcoin. But after I got into Bitcoin, it I understood why. I
Yep.
understood why this lie is actually incentivized. It's
Yes.
because of our monetary system, right?
Yep.
It's because we have a
Exactly.
broken monetary system,
Yep.
that this lie is being fed with this incentive structure, that it's good to lie to people to sell them more junk, because we can just overproduce stuff we don't need because we can expand the monetary supply, right?
Yep.
That's the core issue. But until, I mean, I did not know about you until Momo told me, and I listened to some of your podcasts, and I was like, how come I didn't know about Dr. Barry before? it's
Yeah.
it's but I'm making a leap maybe to try also carnivore. I know that you talk about this a lot, and I haven't tried it. I know that Momo does it. I met him in Prague the other time, and he was just meat and nothing else. I haven't made that step yet, but I'm considering it.
Yeah. And you said several important things there. First thing is a personal admission that I want to applaud you for. You actually thanked. You're thankful for your disease, and that step of personal improvement. So many people either don't want to make that step, or they don't even recognize that that's a step towards the solution. Is being thankful for a disease, being thankful for an addiction, being thankful for your poverty, because that's the first step of rising above it. That's the first step is not, don't let the disease become part of your definition. So many people do that. It's like, oh, I'm a psoriatic. That's just who I am. And so therefore I've got to take all these medicines. I've got to go to all these doctors. I've got to do all this stuff. No. Acknowledge your disease or your autoimmune condition. Acknowledge your metabolic whatever. That is not part of who you are. Part of who you are is the journey to discover what's the root cause of this, not what artificial medicine can I mask the symptoms with, or in your wife's case, what injection can I take that actually will retard my immune system, make my immune system less efficient, thereby increasing my risk of infectious disease and cancer. No, that's obviously not the solution. That's not fixing the root cause. That is a fiat solution. That literally is slapping a half-ass Band-Aid on it. That's not going to give you any long-term health. It's not going to give you any meaningful health span or lifespan improvement. It's just a temporary shitty Band-Aid. And so what you were just describing, we've already talked about fiat money, which all your listeners understand that concept, or quickly coming to understand it. But then we talk about fiat food, and this is basically commodity food. Any food-like substance that a government can turn into a commodity, and they can fill up a cargo ship with this and ship it to another country, and it can sit in the cargo ship for a month, and then it can sit in a warehouse for 6 months, and then it can go to the factory and get processed, and then it can sit on a supermarket shelf, a grocery shelf, for 6 months and still be edible. That's not real food. That's never real food. And one of the things that I fell in love with real keto carnivore foods is you cannot scale them up. They encourage local production. They encourage local farmers and local ranchers. Real food must be produced locally or semi-locally, right? We can try to raise beef in Argentina or mutton in New Zealand and then ship that all over the world. And that sort of works, but you still never get the scale of a company like Kellogg's or General Mills or Mondelez or Kraft Heinz. You never get that multi-billion-dollar scale with real food. And that there's a lesson in that. Just like with you've got $20 million of fiat money that you keep in the bank and you keep in the stock market, and you feel very comfortable that you're very safe, you're very wealthy. That's going to come back and bite you, just like those shots that your wife was injecting for her autoimmune condition. It's exactly the same paradigm. That's fiat medicine. That's where you go see a doctor. You basically relinquish all of your health and medical rights and say, doctor, I don't know anything. You know everything. You're the demigod here. whatever you say, I'll do blindly. I'm not going to look into it. I'm not going to do an internet search. I'm not going to think about, well, why? Why me and no one else? Why do I have this? What's different about me? What am I doing? Am I doing anything wrong in my lifestyle? Is it my environment? Is it my food? Why would any rational human not look at those things first? It's because we've been trained in fiat schools that if you have a problem, you must turn your problem over thoughtlessly to an expert.
To an expert.
Right? Oh, you got $1 million, you don't know what to do with it? Oh, get a financial advisor who was trained from grade school to believe in fiat money and to believe in the fiat economy. Give that person your $1 million to invest for you because you're not an expert. That's a recipe to wind up broke, right? Going to a specialist and getting these injections that literally cripple your immune system. That's a way to wind up with your health destroyed and to have a short, miserable life and die prematurely and have no health span in the interim. Do you see? I want everybody to see how all of this is related. It's all the same fallacious paradigm. Is that I'm not responsible ultimately for my disease. I'm not responsible for my financial freedom. I'm not responsible for anything. I'm going to relinquish my responsibility. I'm going to turn over. I'm going to make someone else the custodian of my health, of my food, of my finances. I'm going to let someone else be in charge. That is not the way. That's not what made humanity the apex species that it is today. That kind of thinking is always fallacious. It's always long-term disastrous. It's always going to go to zero, whether you're talking about food or health or money. It always goes to zero.
Yeah.
True.
I'm just going to comment one thing, and then I'm going to divert to a question to you directly, Dr. Barry. So just to add to what you just said, you're absolutely right. This is the condition that everybody has been taught, that you should not, actually, you don't need to take responsibility. You should give the responsibility to somebody else, right? However, if we actually had a healthy form of money, you actually could not think about this issue and just hold the form of money that is healthy and just save yourself into prosperity, right?
Yep.
But the problem is, because our monetary system is completely broken, we actually are forced to trust intermediaries to manage our money because we cannot save, right? I cannot be just a doctor and just to practice medicine and save money for my future and get fabulously wealthy over time. That doesn't work like that. So
that's right.
Doctors today, I have a friend who is a dentist, for example. He has a side hustle, which is real estate, because he says, Ruzbeh, I cannot become rich by just being a dentist. It doesn't work like that, right? But there was a time where you could just be a dentist or a doctor, and you had an income, and you just saved for like 10 or 15 years, and you could buy a house, right?
Yep.
That's something that no one is able to attain at this time right now, right? This was my comment, and I would. Yes, go ahead.
That's back in the day when the U.S. dollar was the safest. When it was the most inflation free, and there's always been inflation. Don't get me wrong, but you could literally make more money than inflation would eat up at a certain period of time. And Eric Weinstein, he calls this magical few decades, and it's never occurred in human history before. And I predict it'll never occur again. Just the perfect accumulation of different geopolitical and geographical events all came together to make America this place where their money was as good as gold. It was backed by gold for many decades, and then they stopped that, and that was the downfall of the U.S. dollar. And you see this slow motion train wreck that started in 1913. It progressed in 1971, and it just kept going. And now we're in the end stages of the US dollar. But how do you tell somebody who, your dentist friends, his parents were raised in that magical period of time when the US dollar was as good as gold, and you could save and you could build wealth using that. But now that time is over, and that's sad. It's sad and it's heartbreaking. And for people who believe in America, the US dollar is tied so closely to the story of the United States that it's hard for average people to tease out. No, the money's different from that belief, that set of ideas and values that is America. The money's not. That's not tied to that anymore. It's been that connection's been completely broken. And so your dentist friend's right. He'll never become truly wealthy, even though the average person looks at his salary and goes, "Oh my God, you make all this money." But your friend has realized, no, inflation is eating this money up faster than I can make it. I can't accumulate wealth. And so we're at the end stage of the US dollar. And I think most people who study this sort of thing realize that. And what happens in the end stage of any currency is it's inflated out of existence, and the powers that be start to lie. The institutions that we should be able to trust with our life start to lie to us just a little bit, and then a little more, and then a little more. And so now they're saying, oh, the official inflation rate's 2 or 3%. Well, any human that lives in the real world knows that inflation is much higher than that.
Yeah.
It's 7 to 15%, depending on whatever. And so basically, unless you're making a 10% return on your money, you're becoming poor. But the literal federal government of the United States is lying to every one of its citizens about the GDP and the rate of inflation. That's
100.
an end stage behavior. You don't lie about something unless it's burning down, and it's burning down, and you're trying to keep everybody from fleeing. You don't lie. Why are they lying about this? This is easily provable that they're lying. Same goes for fiat medicine. They do studies now, and they compare one prescription medication to another prescription medication. They never compare it to placebo. They never compare it to, oh, let's fix your diet and fix your lifestyle, because fixing your diet and fixing your lifestyle would blow that fiat prescription out of the water every single time. And so they'll say, oh, this new medication is 2% better than that old medication. So we're going to get an FDA approval on that, and we're going to spend $100 million advertising it, and we'll make $1 billion on something that's 2% better than the old medication, but it's 10 or 20% worse than fixing your food and fixing your lifestyle, which is the real root cause and the real solution. Just like Bitcoin, that's the real solution, because unless you want to go back to gold and silver, which there are many problems with that.
Yes, 100%.
What are you
Momo,
going
do
to do?
you want to
You
ask a
got
question?
to address the root cause.
Yes.
Yeah, I just want to take this chance to first say that I really want to take this chance to thank you for all the years that I've been following you since 2019, 2020. And I admire your open-mindedness. You are a doctor for over decades of experience. And even when it comes to health, you are able to claim ignorance and learn anew. And you have doubted about the fundamental things that they have taught to you at school. I remember those days when they were pushing on some injection on everyone, and there were some arrogant doctors who were, most of them were very young, and they were like, I'm a doctor, which means that I can break every bone in your body. Why name him then? But in those times, you were there saying that there are gym bros on YouTube who give better health advice than many doctors, and you yourself are a doctor, and you say that, and your book is titled "The Lies My Doctor Told Me," and I love that book, written in very simple language, and I took some of the quotes from it, the ones that could be taken out of context and in very concise form. I translated them and I shared them with my audience. So I wanted to take this chance to also voice my appreciation and admiration for your work.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, so maybe this is also a good time to divert to the actual topic we wanted to talk about, which is custody, Dr. Barry, if you don't mind. So you said when we were offline that you are now taking the leap to actually, because of all the reasons you just said, to take Bitcoin into your own custody. So tell us a little bit about that. What made you decide to do this, and what are your open questions that we can maybe go through, because we at 21st Capital, this is what we do, right?
Yeah. I love it. So yeah, like I said, I started off on Coinbase with some Ethereum and some Bitcoin, just playing around with it. I felt like this is something, this is real, this is going to be a big deal, but I don't understand it. But I get it, sort of, that no, this is not going to go away. This is not a fad. And so every now and then I would buy $100 here, $100 there, if I had a little extra cash. And then I got on Nostr because I saw all the censorship that went on social media in 2020, 2021 and beyond. It's like, oh, okay, so this can go away. This can disappear. Right. And so I need to find a platform that it would be very, very hard to cancel. Basically, to cancel Nostr the way I currently understand it, you'd have to unplug the world and basically go back to the Stone Age in order to cancel one person on Nostr. So that sounded very important. And getting signed up as somebody, obviously I'm on social media all the time. I understand how computers work. I understand. But again, there's that paradigm shift. And it's like, God, it's such a pain in the butt to get on Nostr. It's all this stuff that's not intuitive, right? And so I'm like, damn it. And so I've got a good friend, Jack Spirko, who has the Survival podcast. And he's like, he kept saying to me things like, dude, do you hate money? Do you hate being uncancelable? What's wrong with you? Why are you not in this stuff? And I'm like, because it's not easy. It's easy to start a TikTok account, and literally I can do it in a minute and a half. But this Nostr bullshit, it's hard. There's keys, public, private. What? I got to do all this shit. What? And so he's literally been yelling at me about Nostr for 2 years. And then finally, I saw a couple of friends who were not saying anything on social media, that they were not saying terrible things, right? And they were getting warnings, and they were getting strikes, and they were getting canceled. I'm like, okay, so this is not just COVID deniers who are getting it. This is people who are saying actual useful, meaningful things. I'm like, okay, I got to figure this Nostr thing out. And so I finally get on Nostr. I use Primal. I think what's the other one? I'm on another one too, but I usually use Damus. Yeah, Damus. Yeah. That was the first one. And then I found Primal. I'm like, okay, I can figure this out. And so everybody on Nostr started saying, because I was like, hey, I've got some Bitcoin and some Ethereum on Coinbase. And I thought they'd all be like, yay. And they're all like, idiot, what are you doing? I'm like, wait, what? And so this is the newcomer's learning curve. Is you think you're doing stuff, and it may be less bad than what you were doing before, but it's not. It's still not optimal, right? It's not optimal. No, get off Coinbase. What are you doing? Why do you own Ethereum, you moron? And so I'm like, oh, okay. So I watched some more YouTube videos. I listened to some more people who I consider to know what they're talking about. I'm like, oh,
when was that? When was that?
Oh, that was currently, but then probably for the last 2 years. I'll get interested in Bitcoin kind of in spurts. And I think that's how the average person is. They get busy with life, they get busy with other stuff, and then they come back around and they're like, oh yeah, let me look into this thing some more. Then I'd watch some more Michael Saylor and other people, and I'd be like, oh, Bitcoin, got it. So I'd get rid of all the Ethereum.
That's what Ruzbeh wanted to know.
Yeah. So Michael Saylor, and
before Michael Saylor or after Michael Saylor?
After Michael Saylor, I'm like, yeah, okay, Ethereum's probably dumb. and being on Coinbase is probably dumb. It's still better than not having any Bitcoin, right? But
Of course.
I want to be optimum, just like my health, just like nutrition, just like my diet, my lifestyle. I don't want to just get by. I want to be optimal. And so for me to be optimal, I have to eat a carnivore diet health-wise. I have to go to bed and get good sleep. I have to go out in the morning sun. I have to be active. I have to choose to do all those things. Same goes for cryptocurrency. Yeah, owning any is better than none, but is that optimal? No. So then I'm like, okay, so I downloaded Strike and opened an account, and I moved all my Bitcoin off Coinbase, which is a real pain in the ass. Once again, that friction, right? Because Coinbase doesn't make it easy to do that. So I would text my friend Jack, and he's like, God, you're such a boomer. And I'm like, dude, I am not a boomer, okay? I just can't figure this out. And finally, I figured it out. Yay, I figured it out. And so this is the learning curve for every important thing that humanity's faced with. Literally every important thing, there's friction involved.
Yes.
And you've got to consciously decide to overcome that friction. And I think that's very important for people who are early and now just bought a little Bitcoin, or they just bought a little Doge or shitcoin or titcoin or asshole coin or whatever, right? There's friction as you learn. That's good. It's good. It's good that there's friction. It's good that it's not fall off a log easy to open a Nostr account.
Yeah,
it's actually a good thing. You got to pay for the good stuff. You have to pay with friction. So you have to learn. There's a learning curve, and I'm sorry that there's a learning curve, but that's how real things in life are. You have to put in the time, and you have to put in the energy to learn these things and to be able to accomplish these things, or you're going to get left behind. And so now I'm all in Bitcoin, all on Strike, and now I'm looking at self-custody because I've accumulated enough Bitcoin now that if I were to lose it, it would hurt. Okay, it would hurt.
Yes.
Before, I had $200 worth of Bitcoin. If I lost it, oh well, it sucks, but no big deal. But now I'm like, dude, if this number went to zero, that would hurt. And I don't want that number to I don't want anybody in the world to have the power over me to make my Bitcoin number go to zero.
Yeah.
So now I've got to take control of my Bitcoin. I have to self-custody this so that somebody will have to come with a gun and make me give them my phrases and make me right. And let me tell you, I'm a country boy. I grew up rough. You're going to play hell getting my phrases, right? It's not going to be fun to do that. And so, but if you could do that anonymously on the internet because I'm on some stupid exchange and you could somehow trick me and all of a sudden my Bitcoin number goes to zero, there you go.
Yes.
I
That's
lost
the
it
problem.
all. Yeah.
Exactly.
And so my learning curve about self-custody is straight up. I'll tell you right now, I'm nervous because I have ADHD. I'm very forgetful. So what if I forget my phrases? What if I forget where I put my phrases? What if the cleaning lady throws away the book that I wrote my phrases down? You see, and so, but again, we're coming back to, in the end, in reality, this is all on me. But that's how real life is, and that's how real life has been since the first time that a human being stood up and killed something and ate it. It's all on you. But it feels like that's a bad thing. But I know, because I understand human psychology, that it's good that that's scary. That's a good thing. And it's good that that's hard. And it's good that there's a learning curve, because ultimately that's my ultimate protection as a sovereign human, is that there is that friction there.
So just to dial back on our previous conversation, we know that paleo diet is something that has existed for thousands of years, right? So we know that millions of years, yes. So humans have not evolved in the past 100 years. They have evolved over thousands of millions of years, right?
Yeah.
And also humans have used different kinds of monetary units in the past, right?
Yeah.
So we have always done money in our own custody before, until we actually started until we actually started to do commerce internationally. Then it became actually a problem, because if you want to send money overseas, it is very hard to do it with a gold bar, right?
Yep.
So that is the problem that banks started to solve for a period, and we started to trust them. So just like our fiat diet that we got used to in the past 100 years, we got used to, uh, trusting banks to do transactions for us. So that's why we're scared that if we forget what we did, everything is going to be gone, right? But that's
Yep.
nothing new, right? If you forget where you put your gold, that's also a problem, right? Where did I put my money? I don't know where I put my money, right?
Yep.
But fortunately, Bitcoin has solved this problem of being able to send money from point A to point B, wherever you are in the world, without a bank, without trusting the bank, right? And it has also fixed the problem of inflation, because no one can inflate the Bitcoin. Bitcoin is fixed in its unit, and you're not being debased on
Yes.
its network.
Yes.
However, this is only true if you own the real Bitcoin, right? And as long as you have your Bitcoin on a Coinbase or on a Strike, it is just a number on a screen, as is your dollars on your US dollar account with your bank. There's absolutely no difference. But as
Yep.
soon as you take this Bitcoin offline to your own hardware wallet, where you actually have the private key, this is where you have proof on the network of Bitcoin, which is uncorruptible, uncensorable, that you actually own this number of Bitcoin, or uh, subunits of Bitcoin, in relation to the total number of Bitcoin that exists on this network, right? But this is only true if you actually take self custody. Now, what's the cost, or what's the, we call it in Bitcoin, in the Bitcoin network or community, what's the trade off, right? Because there's always a trade off, right? As soon as you take self custody, you are responsible for your money. Just like if you go to your bank and you withdraw $10,000 in cash, if someone comes on your way home and robs you, that is on your own. The money is gone. Nobody can help you, right? It's very hard to get that money back, right?
Yep.
But fortunately, Dr. Berry, because Bitcoin is not gold, but it is digital gold, it is programmable gold. It is programmable money. So we have solutions that actually help the individual or the company who want to take self custody, that actually um, helps the individual get the trade off, or come against the trade off a little bit, or actually to its maximum, to lower the risk of loss, to lower the risk of theft, and to lower the risk of intermediaries whatsoever, right? So what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is, traditional self custody is you take one of these devices and it gives you a private key, you write it down, right? And that's the Bitcoin, right? If you lose that, it's game over. There is nothing you can do to get that money back, just like cash, right? It's cash in your pocket, right? That is, if you have hundreds of thousands of dollars, or even tens of thousands of dollars, or even if you have just a few thousand and it's everything you have, that is a huge risk, right? Because if you lose that key, it's too late. You cannot get that money back, right? But thankfully, in the Bitcoin community, there has been improvements to reduce this risk to its minimum. Okay. And the method that you can use to do that is something that we call multi-sig. Okay. So what is a multi-sig? A multi-sig is, simply spoken, instead of using one device, you use two. Okay. And you have two private keys that you write down, and you keep one of them at home, and you keep one of them at your bank, or in a safety deposit box. And no one can do with the keys individually anything. No one can do anything with them, right? And what we do at 21st Capital is to help the individual do this setup securely, to make sure he doesn't make any stupid mistake. Because if you make a mistake while setting this up, because it's a very sensitive task, right,
Game over.
you will end up losing your Bitcoin forever. There is no way to get your Bitcoin back, right? So this is what we do. We walk everybody through this process of setting up a vault. We call it a vault, where you can actually never lose your Bitcoin, no matter what happens. Even if somebody breaks into your house with a $5 wrench and tries to get your Bitcoin, they cannot, because you're holding one key at home and the other key is at the bank. And you probably, if you want us to help you with a third key, we would be the third key, but we cannot move the money because we have only one key. And you need at least two keys from the total of three keys in order to move the money, right? So you have the beauty of self custody because you have the Bitcoin, it's under your control, but you don't have to worry about theft, you don't have to worry about loss, you don't have to worry about any of the downsides of self custody, um, because it simply cannot happen. No matter what happens, if you think through every scenario, what can happen, there is there is a solution for that scenario, if that makes sense.
Yes. Yeah. And that, I think that would be super useful to have somebody to walk you through that process, because, for somebody who still trusts the bank and still trusts the US government, the idea of 100% of the responsibility being on you. If you forget this, if you lose this, that's it. You're screwed.
Yes.
But when we look at the history of humanity, that's how it's always been. But we've lived through this magical period of time when everything was easy and everything was insured and everything was guaranteed. And if you screw up, we can fix it. It's okay. You don't need to be responsible. We've all gotten lazy and gotten used to that. And so this having self-custody sounds very scary. So I think having somebody who could walk you through this while never having access to your Bitcoin, like you said, you have one key maybe, or you have no key, but you can't do anything with that. You can never take my Bitcoin because you have
Yes.
that key, or because
Yes.
you help me set that up. It's not like giving somebody the password, the username and password to your bank account. It's not like that, correct?
Yes, exactly, exactly. It's not like that. So the downside of Bitcoin, Dr. Barry, is that there is no one to ask. There is a network of distributed people all around the world. There is no customer service actually. So you
Right.
have to, once you enter this space, it's a wild place of the entire internet, and you have to go through so many shit coins until you actually, like, your story is the typical story of somebody who just gets in, and doesn't understand anything. And unfortunately, there is so many scammers in the space as well, because it is still a little bit unregulated in most of the areas, in most exchanges, right? So the amount of theft and scamming is huge, which turns off a lot of new users. So we are trying to eliminate that risk for the individual. We try to be, let's say, the customer support service for Bitcoiners who actually want to own the Bitcoin and not trust anybody. You know what I
Yep.
mean? So
Yep.
for the everyday person who wants to do that, we do that. And on top of that, what we also solve is inheritance. So if you, for example, say, I have a kid and I don't want to tell my kid how much Bitcoin I have, and I don't want to give my kid access to my Bitcoin right now, right? How do I solve that, right? If I have a trust and the Bitcoin is in the trust, then, through the legal system, it's solvable. But how do I solve this technically, right? That's a huge problem that you actually need to solve as well, right? And the way we solve it is, we say, okay, we did this 2 out of 3, right? You have 2 keys, we have 1 key. Here's what we're going to do. We are going to program into your vault something that we call a time lock. And just interrupt me when it gets too complicated, okay? Because it's a new way of doing custody, which is pretty amazing. It's mind-blowing. So the way you do this is you say, I want a 4th key, and I want this key to be with my kid. And this key is time locked for the future. It's not going to be active right now. I don't want this key to have any access to anything right now. However, if I pass away and I don't move my Bitcoin or I don't touch my vault, I want my kid to have access to this vault with his key. And the way we do it is we program this into the Bitcoin blockchain, because the Bitcoin blockchain, I don't know how much you know about the blockchain itself, but it has its own clock, right? So every block that exists in the Bitcoin blockchain is around 10 minutes, okay? And the way we communicate this trustlessly, completely trustlessly into the Bitcoin blockchain is we say, okay, Dr. Berry's vault is a 2 out of 3. However, there is a 4th key that should be able to spend at block height XYZ in the future. And as soon as this block gets is reached and you did not move the Bitcoin during this time, that key is able to spend the Bitcoin.
Excellent.
And the
because
way
that's very relevant to my life, because I have two young ones, and
yes.
It would be nice to know that if I suddenly die or something, there's a contingency plan where there is a key for them, but they don't get it when they're 11 and 12. They get it when they're whatever age I determine based on the time stamps of the blockchain.
Yes. So the way we program this is because you might ask, what happens if I don't touch the Bitcoin after 12 months, right? What happens then, right? So the way we do this is every 10 months, you just refresh the Bitcoin. And you just sign a transaction. And as soon as you sign a transaction, you just move the Bitcoin. I mean, on the vault, you just press refresh and it will do it for you automatically. But what happens in the background is it just moves the Bitcoin from one address to another address of your own. And that's how the Bitcoin blockchain knows, aha, Dr. Berry is still alive. He still has access to his keys. And so we're just going to postpone the 12 months time lock of his kid's key to another 12 months. And that's how you postpone this 12 months into perpetuity, as long as you have access to your vault, as long as you're around. So the kid has no access to it, but if something happens to you, he will have access to it. And he will need only one key. He doesn't need this complicated 2 out of 3 that you build that you don't, or maybe you forget it. Maybe you forget it, right? And if you forget it, your kid has still a key that can access the vault after 12 months.
Excellent. Yeah, that kind of fail-safe, it's not a pure fail-safe, but it's close. I think that sort of thing would make the average person much more comfortable to store at least some percentage of their wealth in Bitcoin. Like, I think that, and I love it that people are building on the blockchain different services like that. I think that's going to be super helpful for people who are still scared to death to do this. They're like, oh no, this company can walk me through it. They can help me with this. They can also help with, after death issues. Okay. Because you see, that feels more like the bank setup that many people are used to. It feels kind of like that. It feels like you've got a vault in Switzerland. That's what this kind of feels like. Like, oh, this is very safe. I still have access, and there's a workaround so my kids can have access, but not before I say it's time. And we've all seen the movies where you have to have 2 keys to get into the vault in Switzerland, or you have to have this, that, or whatever. And so that's what this feels a lot like. And I think it'll be seductive to a lot of people. Like, ooh, that sounds kind of sexy. But then to other people, it's going to feel safer than, oh, I've just got this hardware wallet, and if the cleaning lady throws it out, then what? I think, this sounds like a great innovation.
It's a
Yeah, it
huge
really is.
leap. The
It
traditional
is.
method is a huge leap. It really feels stressful, and I understand when someone cannot make that leap and they are like, oh, if I lose that one key, what happens then? I will lose access to all my funds. But here, if you lose that key and you don't touch it, another key gets activated, or the multi-sig degrades and becomes simpler, so you can still recover it without a third party setting the rules. Actually, the Bitcoin blockchain does it for you.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it's like working with actually a bank who actually does support you, but actually you don't need to trust the bank.
Right.
because because you don't need to trust us, right? The software that we provide is completely open source. So even if we vanish one day, because this is the most common question, what happens if you guys vanish? What do I do then? No problem. The software is open source. It's on GitHub. You can download it. It's compatible with Bitcoin Core. The original Bitcoin software is Bitcoin Core, right? So even if we vanish from planet Earth one day, you can still access your vault without us, right? So we really try to combine the self custody beauty with the comfort of actually not having the risk of losing your money if you do self custody.
Yeah, that sounds super valuable. Definitely something I'm going to look into as I continue to move towards what feels like a singularity event for me of self custody, because it feels like a big responsibility to actually be responsible for my own money. Oh my God, what a concept. But definitely, I think that I would love the assistance of somebody who could walk me through this while never truly having access to my wealth, but can help me self custody that wealth. I mean, that sounds like a great service.
Yeah, it really is. And obviously, if you wish, we would love to help you do that completely. Of course, for you, it's completely complimentary offline. We don't have to do this online. I don't think yeah, we should do this online. So whenever
Yes.
you want, just send me an email and we schedule a call, and I will walk you through. Even if you say I don't like this complicated vault thing because I still don't understand it quite, and I just want to do a normal self custody, Ruzbeh, just teach me that, and I want to start with that and get comfortable with that. I would be more than happy to help you. I would do it personally for you, absolutely, with absolute pleasure.
That's perfect. I think definitely I'll pursue that in the near future. It's funny how when people come to Bitcoin, I'm the same way. Like, I've always studied monetary policy and economics and Hayek and Friedman and all the guys. I've been reading all this stuff for years, and I think it's because I read a book by Ayn Rand when I was 13 years old called Fountainhead, and it kind of made me think about everything differently my entire teenage and adult life. And most people don't ever have that exposure to thinking objectively, and so they trust the bank. They trust the federal government. They blindly trust, and they do not know how it works. So do you see the irony of this? They do not understand fractional reserve banking. They do not understand fiat money. They do not understand any of this. But then when you guys or me or anybody starts talking to them about Bitcoin, they're like, "Oh, I would never do that. I don't understand it." And you're like, moron, you don't understand how your money works now. Currently, you don't understand it. You literally couldn't
Precisely.
draw a third grade cartoon of how your money is protected and stored and works. But yet that's your argument against Bitcoin, is that you don't understand it. That's just the insanity of Homo sapiens. We're all just crazy hairless monkeys trying to stand up straight and act like we're logical.
It's
And
like, it's like teaching. I always say this, Dr. Berry. It's always trying to teach a fish about water. You cannot teach fish about water, right? Because it
yeah,
swims inside the water. It doesn't
yes,
realize that it's inside the water. But this water around the fish is diluted, it's actually poisoned, and the fish doesn't feel it, but it feels like something is wrong. Like I feel sick. Something is wrong around me, and
Yep.
it looks, and some fishes realize, oh, okay, I need to jump out of this aquarium and jump into the other aquarium, because the other aquarium, which is a Bitcoin aquarium, has actually clean water in it, and I can survive there, right? That's where people are. They're in this poisoned aquarium and they're swimming around, and they still don't realize, and but they will realize as soon as the water gets too toxic, right? Because people in Argentina do realize what's happening, people in
Yes.
Turkey
Yes.
do realize what's happening,
Yes.
but people in the US still struggle because the poison is not hard enough, right?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, just like
Right.
I woke up to the fact that I need to change my diet with my pain. It's the same concept, right? Most people have to wake up through
Absolutely.
pain. That's the way it works,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
pain is the prime motivator. Ultimately, it's pain.
Yeah.
And yeah, currently the aquarium in the United States is not quite poisonous enough. It's still quite comfortable. There's still this safety net that's promised. Whether that actually gets delivered or not, you never know until the time comes. And I think that's a great analogy. I think the aquarium, the United States aquarium, has to become poisonous enough, obviously poisonous, less comfortable. And I think we're going to see that play out over the next few years, regardless of which administration is in power, because fiat currency poisons everything from the food to people's morality to the government's ability to solve problems. Everything is poisoned by fiat. It just is by definition. And I think once the U.S. aquarium gets noxious enough, there will be such a mass movement into Bitcoin that it'll be just glorious to behold. We're not there yet, but I think it's coming. And I think the early adopters who go ahead and just buy a little Bitcoin, my current goal is to try to just own a tenth of a Bitcoin. That's my goal currently, right? Just to get to a tenth of a Bitcoin and then self-custody that. And I think everybody needs to set a little goal, even if it's just, I want to get, a one 10,000th of a Bitcoin just to have, just in case. You never know. And then to go through the pain and the friction of getting to that where you actually possess that, where no other human can ever take that from you. That is part of the journey. That's part of this leg of the journey for humanity. The journey used to be, okay, you've got to grow up and not starve to death or be killed. You've got to learn how to hunt so you can feed yourself. If you fail enough times at a hunt, guess what? You just die. That's it. There's no customer service 100,000 years ago that you can call and say, hey, I haven't had a successful kill in 2 weeks. I need some help here. And then they'll be like, okay, we're going to fly you out. No, you just died. That was it. That's reality. And that all those rules still apply. But we've been so comfortable for so long that we forgot that all those rules, the iron rules, still apply. You either learn it and do it and you're successful at it, or you cease to exist. That's the bedrock rule of humanity. And I think this leap into Bitcoin is our next step into that reality, that you got to take charge of this, bro. I'm sorry about the friction, and I'm sorry that it makes you uncomfortable and nervous, but this is real life. And what you've been living in the last 20, 30, 40, 50 years is not real life. It's a simulacra. You got to step out of that, and you got to step back into the real life rules of existence, or you're going to suffer and you'll cease to exist financially, health-wise, in every single way, but ultimately your life. You'll lose it if you don't honor these rules that humanity has been bound by since the first human stood up and tried to kill something and eat it. These rules still apply today, and Bitcoin is the next step in that, I currently believe.
I 100% agree. I 100% agree. Dr. Barry, we've reached the clock. We don't want to take more of your time. I really want to emphasize how much I enjoyed this conversation. I have to
Thank you.
admit, I have never had a conversation online about my diet and Bitcoin at the same time.
I think it's a perfect marriage. I think that it makes intuitive sense once you wrap your head around it. Like, oh, everything's connected. Yeah,
It is.
everything's connected. Yes, absolutely.
I
It's been
totally
a pleasure,
agree.
guys. I really appreciate the opportunity to chat with you guys, and I'll definitely be reaching out in the future as my learning curve continues to go up, and as I continue to wrap my head around changing my paradigm so that I can fully grasp what all this stuff means for the future. Because I think I increasingly every day I think Bitcoin is. I thought it was a big deal before, but now I realize no, it's a much bigger deal than I thought it was. And that realization keeps hitting me over and over as I learn more and more. And as I think about this and as I sit with it and ruminate with it, I'm like, no, this is an even bigger deal than I thought it was. And I think that's everybody's learning curve. And so we got to meet people where they are and say, okay, what do you currently believe? What do you currently understand? Let me help you understand that you're a fish living in water, even though that makes no sense to you and your water's poison. You got to get out of that aquarium. It's going to be super interesting, and I promise it's not going to be boring at all. It may not be fun, but it won't be boring.
True.
And so
It's gonna be volatile. It's gonna be volatile.
I hope that enough people jump into the clean aquarium before it's too late for them and their family.
Yes.
Yeah.
Agreed.
As an Iranian, I didn't have to, I didn't have to lose my trust because it had already been lost. So yeah, that's the difference between an Iranian coming into Bitcoin. And I was looking for Bitcoin and I was like, wow, this thing existed many years ago. So I adopted it. But for an American, it would be more difficult.
I thought about this while we were talking, and I've never put all this together before, but I would predict that if you could go back in time and talk to somebody when they lived on a true gold standard, where you had to lug your gold around and you were at risk, somebody could just whack you on the head and steal your gold. If you presented that person with the Bitcoin idea, they would immediately see, there wouldn't be this huge learning curve, just like Momo in Iran.
Yes.
He understands not being able to trust anyone and not literally it's you against the world. And if you fail, you die. That's it. Back before we had this magical zone of comfort that we've had for the last few decades in America, you would immediately grasp that and say, yes, I love that. How do I get on the bit chain? How do I get on there? How do I get some? But I think it's only people who have had this false comfort and this false narrative of safety. Those are the people who have trouble understanding it. Does that make sense?
Yes,
Absolutely.
100%. Social security, money printing, and free food, free stuff.
Yep.
Nothing is free, everybody. Nothing is free in this world.
Free lunch.
There is no free lunch. Anytime the government gives you something for free, it comes at a cost of the saver. This is what people need to understand. But let's wrap it up, Mohammed.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much.
We'd be really happy to have you and help you with the self-custody, the trustless self-custody, which is forgiving. And what's missing, you mentioned Nostr. This show has been streaming on Nostr like always. And we are going to continue this conversation offline. And hopefully your next live show is going to be streamed on Nostr too, so we can more easily follow you.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you guys so much for the information. And I look forward to learning more from you in the future. Absolutely.
100%, Dr. Berry. Thank you very much. Have a beautiful day.
Thank you.
Thank you.